My name is Peter Nicholls. I'm a life enjoyment mentor. My business is enjoyment, my product is purpose, and I gain a great deal of opportunity to talk to people like Prosper on matters of life, and I found the session extremely valuable, and I recommend you listen for further work with Prosper. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be unpacking the art and science of building a life and a business that you love. Joining me today is none other than Peter Nicholls, the People Gardener. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thank you, Prosper. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. We're going to be exploring your journey and literally what it entails and means to be the people's gardener. All right. Now, for those that are tuning in for the first time, welcome. This is the Online Prosperity Show, where we actually have guests like Peter, whose expertise makes him not a master gardener, not for plants, but for people's energy. Okay, that's a lot for us to unpack. You might think, oh, wait a minute, is this a gardening show? No, it ain't. This is, something that you've probably been looking for. So just sit there and relax, because what he does is help people's energy, purpose, and help them enjoy most of their life. He's actually called the Life Enjoyment Mentor. Now, he comes with nearly half a century of experience helping individuals and businesses reimagine what thriving really means. And he's here to share why managing your mental energy, not time, is the real key to your success. A lot of us are just continuously wanting to manage our time, managing whatever resources, but there's a lot of things behind the scenes that we miss out on, and we then realize that we're not getting the results that we are looking for. Now, we're going to be talking about how Peter has transformed lives by teaching people to integrate work and life, and also the power of flow states, and why trees don't stop growing at 65, and neither should you. And this is something that might actually take you aback, because so many people stop growing when they leave school, and so many people stop growing when they stop learning. So you might want to stick around for Peter's insights, practical tips, and his own unique take on how to live a fulfilling life and to truly live fully. And also, did I mention earlier? I don't think so, Peter. Maybe you might correct me. He's got a knack for showing people how to actually enjoy what he calls the dessert years of life. That's deliciously intriguing, Skip everything else. Just go straight to the dessert. So he would say. So let's dive deep into the roots of energy management, and then find out how Peter's journey from observing burnout to mentoring fulfillment is now the story you actually want to learn from. Grab a notebook, your favorite beverage. It could be a whiskey, a kombucha, or a coffee, and get ready to be inspired. Now, Peter, I could go on and on. You could just tell me, hey, start managing your energy. Tell us a little bit about your journey so far. I mean, professionally, you've been doing this for over 40 years.
Yes, it's sort of, it goes back, you're quite right, it's almost 50 years now, but not always being a life enjoyment mentor. For half of those years, I was a recreation planner with the State Department of Recreation and Sport, where my task was to actually help people improve the quality of their lives through improving their recreation requirements, their facilities, their programs, the areas that they use for recreation, to try and improve the quality of those experiences. And I worked with people of almost every age, right through to senior people and schools. But I think the big lesson I learned out of that is it's amazing when people lose themselves in what they enjoy, they find themselves. At the weekend, you look at how people, and I'm sure most of your viewers today, whatever you do at the weekend, how much different is that person? How much different is that person to the person you are during the week? We let ourselves, the true self, come to the surface. Whether we're in the garden, whether we're out walking, whether we're playing sport, out with friends, no matter what it is we do, we love being our true self. But I also learned from those experiences, do you realise that so many people leave the bulk of those things that they use and the talents that they use at the weekend at the office door when they go to work on Monday morning? They take through just what's required of them, what job specification says, and they leave that real self at the door. So we have these two lives, this work life and this personal life, and never the twain shall meet, rarely, in many cases. So that was the background of where I got to doing what I do, and I was honestly a bit lost when my recreation planning career came to an end around about 2002, and I'd written a book called Enjoy Being You, How Leisure Can Help You Become the Person You Want to Be, which was a reflection on the work that I was doing over those years as a planner. But I then got asked, could I run a workshop for people who had burnt out, workaholics in a private enterprise organisation who were having a very stressful life. I ran the workshop based on work and leisure, and it changed their lives incredibly. They realised suddenly they brought the whole of their life together into one, and it made a huge difference, so I became a life enjoyment mentor. Now, I probably ought to just explain for 1 minute why I called myself Australia's People Gardener, Growing Better People. Because in that recreation planning work that I had been doing, I was actually very involved in parks and recreation planning. I was a volunteer. I joined the Professional Association of the Royal Australian Institute of Parks and Recreation, and I fairly quickly moved up the line of being state president and even had a stint as national president, where I found that people are actually part of nature. I was helping with the interaction of people with nature, and that's a lot of the work in parks, is keeping people under control so that they don't destroy the nature that they've gone to visit. That sort of issues were coming up, and I found that people come home when they go out into nature. That's when they come alive, and I found this sort of feeling of when you're out in nature, you're home, and nature is almost you're like your family. And we've pushed that aside because of the material, artificial buildings and concrete jungles that we live and work in. And we feel so much better when we go out into the country. And I suppose when I use the term gardener, and any person who's a gardener and watching today will know, you don't actually make the plants grow. What you do is provide the healthy environment which will give those plants the best chance to grow and blossom and flourish. And that's what I do in the work that I do. Your life is your own. It's not for me to tell you what to do. It was one of the first principles I learned in recreation planning. Never to advise people what their recreation should be. They tell me what they want and what they want, how they want to improve it, and my job was to find ways of improving it. And I've always maintained that principle, that the idea is to actually value what the person's independent thinking of what they love. Nobody can tell you what you enjoy. You're the only one who can decide what you enjoy. And this became very much the foundation of all that I do and continue to do to this day. That's probably not a bad start-up point anyway, I think, Prosper.
Absolutely. Well, I really, really love that intro and, just really showcasing to us what it is that you've been doing, because when you started talking about the concrete jungle, I was just starting to notice, I don't know This is something that I just thought right now. The things we actually pay for are artificial. We never pay for anything that's natural. Because then I was trying to validate that while you were talking. Going to the parks, going for a hike, that's free. For you to actually just maybe go to the beach or something like that, that is free. To be in nature and things of that nature, you don't necessarily pay to be in that, but the things that are man-made are the things that we actually pay for, which makes it very difficult for people to connect. So sorry, I just went on a tangent with that,
This
but
is
that's
fine. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's,
absolutely right. So,
it's,
so you were for all this time really concentrating on the work side of things without you, looking at the life side of things. Walk us through what your, time was like. Yes, we can look at other people's side of things, but what was Peter's day to day like?
I'm glad you asked that because you're right. I actually was a good desk clerk for those first 15 years of work before I became a recreation planner. And the transition into becoming a recreation planner, which was I found my passion and that's what I had to do. And there's a whole story behind that, which we won't have time to do today, but it's just something that I've always loved doing and why I keep doing it to this day and it keeps me alive now. But I think actually at the time I found myself making the transition from the work side of the work ethic, where you had work on one side and leisure and fun and the weekend on the other. And as I say, there was a big division between the two. And I suddenly found myself on the wrong side of the wall. First of all, the people I was working for in my desk job were saying, "You're mad. What are you doing? You're giving up a good, safe government job to be out there doing stuff which probably is just will probably collapse in a year or so. It's a whole new area. You shouldn't. You're doing a silly thing." There is another side of people saying, "People, I wish I had Peter. I had the courage you have. I'd love to do what you're going to do." But now it was a leap of faith to a lot of people that they couldn't. I often say now, to enjoy being your true self can be one of the biggest leaps of faith you can make, because people are often so scared to allow the real self to come through, rather they feel I must toe the line, do what I'm told, stay with the mob, be safe, because that's the thing I was taught to do and I should stay that way. So the transition for me was first of all a rather seen as a major one. But I suppose, from then on, I've seen life from a very different perspective to people who have simply come through a working career and the weekend has been the only time when they get out and have a bit of a break from work, perhaps going for a walk, as you say, getting out in the bush. I was seeing it from the people side, the life side of what's going on. And that's really helped me a great deal in terms of where enjoyment, purpose, energy, all those things come into play, because I haven't been seeing them from what the boss wants. I've been seeing from what the person wants. And so I'm seeing life from the individual's point of view, not so much from the employer's point of view. Which I have to say has not been an easy fight over the years. Employers who have said, I can't measure enjoyment. Enjoyment is for the weekend. I don't want to know about that. I've had those struggles. I think since COVID, with well-being becoming a bit more of an issue these days in business, I'm starting to get people listening saying, "Tell me a bit more. This is interesting." So it is. It's a different perspective.
Absolutely. Well, I've got a nice explanation to that, Peter, because if you noticed during the pandemic, the COVID time that you're talking about, the thing that got people to pay attention is all these jobs, and I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect, all these jobs that we are waking up in the morning, leaving our families and going to sacrifice the 8 hours of a day. Nobody needed them for 2 years. Like, literally nobody needed some of the work that we are doing right now. So I would feel like, at the very core of somebody's heart, they are now just pushing a paper that nobody really needed. And as human beings, we work for contribution. I don't know, maybe you can comment a little bit on that one, Peter.
I mentioned that book, Enjoy Being You, which I published in 2000, and it did sell quite well. But like all books, they go out of fashion after a while. And I put a few quotes from Enjoy Being You on the LinkedIn and various Facebook social pages, social media pages during the lockdown time. And boy, did I get some reactions and positive mention that. Yes, I want to enjoy being me. I've been towing the line, being under stress. I thought at first, when are we going to go back to the way things were before COVID? Then I started to realise, no, I don't want things to go back to the way they were before COVID. I want to express me. And we had things like the working from home issue. The person was starting to take some control over the working conditions. They were starting to have a say, which the business had to listen to. Then there's the question of the well-being. When business recognised that people are stressed out, badly stressed out, having great mental health issues from the particularly in Melbourne. Melbourne, of course, you're almost the prime world example, weren't you?
We're the poster child.
Absolutely. And, it was where people really did stop and had time to stop and think. Who am I? What do I really want to do with my life? And the Great Resignation was a big world issue about people saying, I want to quit my work, I may quit my job and get another job. And I might work at an office, I might work in coffee shops. I'm getting to know my local neighbourhood a lot better because I'm spending more time there. All the world was starting to look at things very differently. It was almost like a paradigm shift for practically everything. And I think that's where people's minds are now much more open to things like people, those who are saying there is more to life than simply going every Monday to Friday, earning money, and that's it. I got to say, when I first left that job before I became a recreation planner, I can clearly remember around about the age of 30, looking out the office window one day and saying, 35 more years of this, and that's it. And I get a gold watch and no more. And I thought, that's not good enough. I need purpose. I need a reason for being here. And that sort of came to me more and more, and things started to unfold from there on.
Absolutely. I quite like that because I think most of us, like you said, the 30 years and then looking at a gold watch, it's a measurement of time. I've done my time in this, but what have you actually done in that particular space that you're measuring based on that gold watch? And usually if it's a gold watch, it's a heavy one, and when you get a little bit older, your arms are not going to be able to lift that gold watch for that long. So you emphasize managing energy over time, and I'm really trying to grasp what that actually sort of means. Can you
Right.
explain, first of all, why this shift is crucial, and perhaps share an example of what this looks like in real life?
Yes, the word, the nearest word I think of is drive, but the word that people best understand is energize. Anything that energizes you makes you feel stronger, more enthusiastic, more happily, more involved, more engaged, all those lovely positive thoughts when you feel energized. So what energizes each person as an individual? I'm energized by reading and by writing. I'm energised by singing in two choirs. I'm energised by talking with people. I'm energised by seeing a person have an aha moment during one of my sessions. Well, I say, yes, you're right. I've never thought of that. That's energising. It means it's body, mind and spirit. It's not the physical one. The distinction with the physical energy is, I'll give you a quick example. A woman I was speaking to once, I said, what do you do for energy? She says, I go to the gym 3 times a week. That's very good. I said, what do you do to energise? Quickly as a flash, she said, I love tap dancing. 2 different trains of mind, trains of thought about the need for energy, and business has been always saying a fit person is a better worker. But do you realise only about 7% of the population actually do go out to try and get fitter? The other 93%, will do things, but not necessarily with the fitness involved. They're much more interested. I've got to go back to my recreation planning days. We looked at things like, and people will still be horrified to know that as much as I played sport, I'm not criticising sport, but they were single figure digits for favourite activity through the week. The ones that were much bigger were walking for pleasure, going to libraries, going to the cinema, going to the beach. These were double-figure percentages. That's what people really like doing. And I think those percentages are still pretty good today. So what energises you can be anything of mind, body and spirit. And if you love riding the bike every day, go for it. That's good because you love doing it. If you don't like it, you're not going to keep doing it. Someone will say you should go and run more, and you might run for a couple of days and you say, no, not for me. So this energy is actually, energy is something you can, it's a bit, again, I come back to nature. Nature draws energy from the soil, from the sun, from the water. It's a plentiful supply. With us, our natural energy is always there. And I guess to distinguish it with time, with time is infinite, time is finite, 24/7. Energy is, and you can't deficit budget time. You've got it, and once it's gone, it's gone. You can deficit budget energy, because not only do you feel good for the time that you've been doing what you love, say you're out in the garden, but you feel good for the rest of the day. You feel there's a ripple effect that goes on into everything else that you do. So you actually have to find ways of restoring energy, of re-energising. Good example is driving the car. If you drove the car for mile after mile or kilometre after kilometre, eventually it would run out of fuel. It just stops. Now, it's no good just saying, well, we'll sit and rest for a while, we'll have another go. Doesn't do anything for the energy of the car. You have to refuel the car. And we have to refuel our bodies with new energy regularly, or otherwise we not only will burn out, we'll start misfiring and we'll start breaking down when we least want to, just like the car. It's a beautiful analogy. It's so simple to follow. It's got nothing to do with nature, but it's so easy to understand that it's the energy that drives our life. It's the energy that drives our growth and our whole self-development. It's continuing to have energy. And in dealing with the second half of life, which is my big thing now, we need to recreate that energy for the whole of our life, not just at work. And there's a whole topic in that too.
I like that. Now, Peter, I don't know about you, but I'm working right now. And you did mention earlier on that some people really lose themselves in something they absolutely love. I've created my business and work to just revolve around talking to people and learning and grasping, and you know what I mean? And so it is fueling that part. But I can concur with what you're saying, because some people go to jobs that they don't even like and they're not even concentrating. Hence, there's so many of these accidents that happen in these works because people are not fully engaged. They're just, going through the motion. And now, because of the advent of this 24/7 always on sort of aspect of work, people are now experiencing burnout. And it's now a term that is now synonymous with the culture that we have. It's now like a badge of honor. If you're not burnt out, then it kind of means you're not working hard enough. How does your approach to sort of energy management help people avoid this slippery slope?
I'll pick up first on your point that in fact we used to have 5 days a week of work and 2 days of rest, in theory at least. And then what's happened now is that and through that we knew that we had a set time we could go and recuperate some new energy and then burn it up through the week. And that was all sort of a structured thinking. Now, if we're with practically the division between of work and living is almost completely evaporated. Now we can be on deck anytime 24/7, and we can decide not to be working at some stage of that, but it's a whole continuum. So we now no longer have a structure that says this is when I burn up energy and this is when I generate new energy. We now have to think about an all-week program where we say we need to actually break up our week whenever we can with doing something that's going to re-energise us in some way. And sleep alone is not enough. A bit like I said, the car, if you stop the car, it's not going to refuel. It's nice, it's good, we all like that, and we need our sleep, and I'm not knocking that one little bit. But it's the question, if you think that's going to regenerate the energy, it's not really. It might be, for momentarily you might feel a bit more energised when you first get up, but we really need something that's going to drive your day, drive your week beyond Friday, drive your life. And this is where the question of purpose comes in. Because when you can get up in the day with a purpose in your mind of things you want to get done, then you find the energy starts to follow together. Because now in listening to you and watching what you do, Prosper, you generate energy in your work by simply being out there talking and listening to people about what makes them feel better and what their issues are in life. It's an energising lifestyle. I enjoy an energising lifestyle. It's up here. This is where the energy I'm talking about. My body is sort of starting to slow these days, but this is ticking. And that's where the energy I'm talking about comes to. And I think the energy you can keep going. The time is something that you can't juggle time, but you can juggle energy.
You see, fish don't see the water that they swim in, and neither can people see the air that they breathe, Peter. So half of the time when your neighbor is waking up at 4, coming back at 8 p.m., you kind of start feeling like that's the way it's supposed to be. And if you see yourself just hanging around your house, you kind of feel embarrassed because society and people around you are presenting to you how things are supposed to be. And so many people now no longer sort of know the difference. Now, I have something that I do whenever I'm around or doing something, or even when I'm driving, I listen to my stomach muscles. If I'm tense, it tells me something around me is not working. Or if I'm talking to somebody and I feel my tummy muscles tensing, I automatically want to change the subject or get away from that situation. All right. But that's years and years of teaching myself to find that trigger. Now, how can people notice around them that obviously they're not managing their energy well?
I'm interested in what you just said. What you talked about was a very personal, individual awareness of things weren't right and how you felt that, because only you could work that out for yourself. All this issue that we're talking about is a very individual issue. I talk about enjoyment being an individual thing. The way you react to the world is very individual. The way you react at work is very individual. And I think, first of all, is this, and this is where COVID has helped. We're starting to rethink that the only person who can manage our energy is ourselves. No one can do that for us. And I'm starting to get into business saying, if you want to have an energised staff, you've got to think about them as the whole person, because you are not going to actually generate the energy for them they're the ones who are going to have to generate the energy, and now they've got to find that energy throughout any time of the week, not necessarily during their working days. I think it's coming down to the fact that we are each responsible for and in charge of our own mental health. And I think this is, there's so much worries about mental health which have been world inflicted on people. But the question of how we resolve it is not easy. I certainly don't have a simple answer to it by any means. I guess most of the stuff I do, I focus on we talk about the proverbial 1/5 of the workforce has mental health issues, and the other, I deal with, in a sense, the other 4/5 who are reasonably healthy and can think for themselves. Now, in your case, you have an awareness and you know how to deal with what your issue is, and I'm sure, and we've got to focus on that more and more, about looking at ourselves, what we like doing, who we are, what gives us new energy, and what burns us out. Notice the signs of what burnout. Notice the signs of when you do feel good. Why do I feel good? What did I do? What were the skills I used? What were the talents? What's the passion I was following? What's making me learn? What am I learning something? All this sort of individual thinking is what's needed, and what we each need to actually, more than survive, to actually cope and grow.
No, I like that, because it is individualistic. And, if you look at my fingers here, no two fingers on the same hand are the same height. So what works for one person might not work for the other. And as you were alluding to the fact that one in, 5 people, might be suffering or going through some sort of mental health challenge. And, the work that you're doing sort of, translates into talking to business people and helping them get the most out of their workforce. But I don't see a lot of business people thinking they have to maximize on people's enjoyment and maybe manage their energy. They may believe that that is something they have to look after for themselves. What are some of the challenges that you may have faced when you're trying to introduce this concept of energy management, especially to businesses that are used to maybe conventional productivity metrics, and they only want to measure what moves the needle or moves the bottom line?
I think one, for instance, a lot of businesses have ever done skills audits, and where they say, look, we want to establish what all the skills are we've got in the organisation so we can make better use of them. Most of those skills audits look at what people's skills they use at work. Go back to something I said earlier in our conversation about people leave about 80% of their real skills behind and they don't take them to work. What businesses find is if businesses realise the need to recognise, a quick example, a person who leaves an office after 25 years has been there as a solid citizen, worked hard, but has also perhaps been the computer specialist. When everybody got a computer problem, go and ask him before we have to get a professional. The person who is the social event organiser, that's not part of their job specification. The person who is the father or mother confessor, when someone's having a problem, you go and talk to them. And so when you lose a person of 25 years' work, you lose so much more than the job specification. And I think most people in work office situations will recognise either that was their case or they know other people like that. What we need to do is recognise the whole person, the whole of the week. And the more we allow that whole person to grow, the more everything we do through the week is going to be better. I go back to that first workshop I told you I ran with people who were very burnt out. That really got me into the life mentoring business, because by simply getting them to talk about what they do, what they used to do for leisure and recreation, they had to think for a while. And then when they started to realise that not only what they were doing, but how it made them feel, and there are very simply 5 things that happen when you enjoy yourself. Your mind works with purpose. There's an energy driving the process. Your self-esteem rises. Your life is enriched. You learn something. There's some self-achievement. And I think the best one is there's a virus going around. You pass it on to everyone else. You infect people around you. Now, those things happen every time you're doing something that you enjoy doing. And I was able to show those, and they were all men, I have to say, at the time in that thing, had to make them realise that what it did for them. and it was just remarkable. I had reports back weeks later how much their outlook on life had changed simply through a couple of hours of going through that with me. And I think it's the realisation that the fact we've been hammered in it for 200 years that work is work and everything else is a waste of good working time. We're now starting to realise there's a lot more to life than that. And this sense of enjoyment is the way we learn to grow and develop and blossom and flourish, to use my nature terms. A good example of that, you take an orange tree.
Yep.
An orange tree doesn't start producing oranges till it's about halfway through its life. It's not till it's well and truly established and mature that you start to get decent ripe oranges. That's the fruit of its years. And we're like that too. That's why I suggest to you that we measure age in years, we measure growth in depth. Depth of understanding ourselves, depth of understanding other people, depth of perspective, depth of insight, and in due course, we often think a depth of wisdom. We spend the first half of our life trying to preparing ourselves, trying to get the money to pay for the family, for the education, for the house, paying off a mortgage, and we've set ourselves up. And quite often it's not till we're well away from the people who used to dominate our lives, and nicely, parents, bosses, teachers, that we start to realise, hey, there's more to me than what I thought. What I know, I now know this is what I'm good at, this is what people value about me, and this is what makes me different to everyone else. And I really value that, and I want to make good use of those three characteristics. I haven't done so for now. So this all comes in, this all comes together. It's one of the, I guess, it's the richness of life. It's we talk about the rich tapestry of life. All these things do integrate into growth and development, just like the beautiful oak tree, the magnificent creation it is. It's just the richness of awe. And there's a richness and significance of people which is building all the time if we let it flow.
I like that, Peter. And you just got me thinking, when I started my business, that was about 10 plus years ago. And half of the time, in between breaks, I would maybe take a walk around the neighborhood and maybe walk with my little girl. And I used to experience some sense of guilt that on a Tuesday at 11 a.m., I'm supposed to be somewhere doing something, contributing to the economy. And I can maybe feel that for many people that might be happening, that sense of guilt of, I'm supposed to be doing something, because if I'm enjoying myself now and everybody else is at work, then, I might be on current affair or on a picture on the internet saying, hey, look after that person. I don't think they're with it. Many people really feel guilty prioritizing enjoyment. How do you then help those that are sort of waking up to this way of living to overcome this mindset?
I've got a really good story on that one, because I tell you, when I found exactly that guilt question, I did an all-day workshop with, I went to an all-day session where I gave a session with ministers of religion. And I talked about all the sorts of things we're talking about now. And somebody came up to me during the break and said, Peter, the big thing that you're bringing out is the guilt. As a minister, we feel guilty if we go and have a game of golf at the weekend, because our job we are here to look after our flock, and look after the people's needs of our parishioners. We're expected to be on tap 24/7. If someone's in trouble, they'll phone me and say, I need you, come and visit me. Rarely they get told you shouldn't go and play golf, but the ministers used to say, we feel guilty about going to play golf or going to a show, or taking the family out for a picnic or going away on holidays. There was a huge guilt factor, and it was because of this. And guilt is, of course, a perception of what other people think. Guilt isn't really, something that you create for yourself. You feel guilty in a way because there's an expectation of you. We've lived too much of our lives under expectations and shoulds. I wrote a post not long ago called "The End of Shoulds," and I got a huge amount of reaction to that, the end of shoulds, because we've been told all our lives what we should do, what we're expected to do. Now we're starting to say, yeah, but I think I know what I really want to do, and I'm going to do it too, and start to ignore the shoulds and expectations. So now, in fact, I'm still involved in the church quite a bit. Ministers of religion today continue to now do what they want to and don't feel guilty. I won't say it's actually changed a lot. It's the sense of it they don't have to feel guilty has changed because of the way the world's thinking now. The public perceptions of what's right and what's wrong in terms of life has changed a lot.
And speaking about what's right and what's wrong, what are some of the surprising facts or misconceptions that people actually have about energy management that most people actually get wrong? Because with what you say, this has been 200 years in the making, and so some might have gotten it right and some people are still struggling to figure out how to even get by.
There's a side comment to that, of course, is that individuals are recognising a lot of these new way of thinking. Business and public perception and governments are slower to get the hang of it. Laws don't change rapidly. Public perceptions don't change rapidly. So in a sense, whereas people like you and I think a much bigger percentage of the population than we give credit for are thinking differently now and thinking about it's more the energy, less the time. But the systems still say, you shall do this. For instance, I see there's now moves to get people back to the office. They're now starting to say, look, we're getting a little bit tired of all this business saying, I want to be working at home 3 to 5 days a week. No, we want you back at the office for all these reasons. Even in some cases, that business are saying, look, if you don't come back, you might as well go and find another job. There's a change of getting back to it, but nonetheless, it's a slow process, I suppose, is the overall point. I'm thinking that by individuals thinking this way, it's the bottom-up thinking which takes the top a while to get the hang of. I don't know. Does that answer what you're asking there? I might have wandered a bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm really enjoying all of this, and I'm also supposing the viewer right now is wondering, what the next steps could be, because all of this might be very brand new information for a lot of people, and they're hearing it for the very first time. So yeah.
I would suggest I have a website that I've been gradually building for the whole of my life mentoring. It's about 20 years of articles and information and thoughts there. It's www.australiaspeoplegardener.com.au is a good, worthwhile starting point. It'll give you, and it's under welcome to please read it as much as you like. Enter my library and read whatever you like and take copies of whatever you like. I think it's. I've liked the fact that I've kept it there. I think that's a good starting point. I think to simply have a talk with your family and friends about how much they really want to be who they are. Easy to talk to your children. What do you really want to do with your life? And if they say, well, look, I know you want me to be a doctor or a lawyer or something, say, well, that might be a good idea, but I'm prepared to listen to what you want to do. Teachers are becoming a little more, individually, the teaching I'm finding is more concerned about giving the child a chance to be creative. The system is still struggling. The system is still saying reading, writing, arithmetic, stick with it. But I'm finding more and more creative allowance in thinking along the lines of what does enjoyment mean to me? And I think it's far more than fun or pleasure or even happiness. I don't like the word happiness. It's a bit too ethereal for me. If you want to enjoy life, it's an active word. You make efforts to enjoy what you love doing, what you were born with, the gifts you were born with. Have a good look at what you used to love doing as a 15. For adults, look at what you were doing when you're 15. because that's when we're really thinking and create. What I really want to do with my life is such and such. Whether it happened or not, you might be amazed how much you learn about yourself looking back, and get a photo of yourself when you were that age. It'd be fascinating what you remembered about who you were and what you liked. That's the real you. But
Mm,
I think the website's a good starting point. If people would like to contact me, my email address is a very simple one, peter@apg.life. There's no com, no au. Now, the APG was a shortage of Australia's people gardener, and .lif for life for life, for a life enjoyment mentor. So peter@apg.life. They're the deeper. And if you're on LinkedIn, just look up Peter Nicholls, Life Mentor Adelaide. You'll find me there.
absolutely. Definitely. We'll make sure that all those links are in the show notes so that people can, find their way back to themselves, which is what I think you're doing, Peter, because if people are able to learn how to be, do, and have a happier existence and still be able to look after themselves, I think you literally, because so many people have been taken away, like we sort of looked at in from nature, from the fundamentals of who we are at the core as human beings, so much that they're now just a processed version of who they are, and they've been stripped of all the nutrients and the niceness of them. And what you're doing is go to my website, find something that might nourish you, and you might come back whole. And who am I to stop people from going your way? I also noticed you have a book. I think it's called Hunger to Grow and Free to Be Me.
Yes, the latest one I wrote was Free to Be Me,
Yeah,
why life ethic is replacing the work ethic. But then
right.
there was The Hunger to Grow, how to enjoy the dessert years of your life. Because
Yes,
it's like instead of three courses of before work, work, and after work, now
yes.
it's but the dessert years are sort of the yummy years where you eat what you like and do what you like.
Let's go for that Sunday. Let's go for that Sunday. And what actually motivated you to focus on this stage in life? Does it translate to everyone, or is it people have to wait for that golden age?
Look, no, I think well, I put it this way. I think none of us are very far from being our real selves because we do it quite a lot. We just position it very carefully. I think it's so all our lives we grow from birth to death. We've got rid of this idea of a bell curve life cycle where we get to 50 and then we go downhill on the downhill slide. It's not that talking about the that growing is like that, and it becomes quite exponential growth. The more we learn, the more we understand, the more we want to learn. And I think it's just a natural course of life for people of all ages, of all backgrounds. We've all got our talents. All been born that way. It's just a question of getting back and losing yourself in what you love to find yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because once you find yourself, you are the
You can do
world.
anything.
Now, now, Peter, I can't thank you enough for the time that we've spent on the conversation today. I mean, this has been so powerful in as much as many people are just going through life, without, checks and balances to actually notice, hey, am I alive during this whole process, But what you just did was somewhat of a pattern break. And I feel like the work that you're doing takes people through a journey which helps them reflect and actually start living and not just go through life, without that sort of check. And I just wish so many people will be able to start enjoying life because it's not a luxury, it's actually a necessity for us to be able to live purposefully and productively because you can't do well if you don't feel well.
We complicate life too much. We were born, we grow, we blossom.
Just like a nice garden right there. Wow. And for those that are watching right now, if today's episode resonated with you, I really do encourage Maybe you rewatch this because I know there's a lot of nuggets that were thrown in there and you might not have understood it at the time you were listening to it. But I think if you're now going through it and combing through the finer details, you'll be able to pick up a lot more than you did in the first instance. But if you think you got what you needed from it, why don't you share this with somebody who could use a fresh perspective on life? There's a lot of our loved ones that are just humming and drumming all the way to their own burnout. And if you know somebody who's going through this, I really encourage you to just do them a favor, get them to watch this, even if they're watching it from your phone. Get them to watch as much of this as possible, and hopefully they can actually start implementing Peter's advice today, because when you can be, do, and have a happier existence, the world now starts singing the same tune that you want. And also, don't forget to check out Peter's books, The Hunger to Grow, and also Free to Be Me. I'll put all those links in the show notes, and all the links to the website plus the email address that he's given us for more insights. While you're at it, please
You're
subscribe.
doing a wonderful job, Prosper.
I really appreciate you, Peter. I mean, it's the guests that I have that bring in all these different perspectives that really, help us, and also the inspiring stories and strategies that help us to live our best lives yet. Until next time, stay prosperous and keep thriving. Bye for now.